Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator. I'm all about capturing and curating career and life stories as a meaningful way to celebrate a milestone moment like a big O birthday, anniversary, retirement, or graduation. And I'm at my best when curating photo books that move your memories from the basement or your phone or your computer to the coffee table, giving you and your family and friends access to these treasured memories for years to come. I also love curating and capturing life and career stories through this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? It's a series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, people in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing they are not alone, that everybody starts somewhere and everybody goes through times of transition and times when they feel stuck. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing Darren Kanthal, who is a leadership coach. So welcome, Darren.
Thank you, Kathy. It's nice to be here.
And Darren, if you've listened to some of my podcasts, you know that I always like to start with some icebreaker questions, which is a fun way to get to know you. And there's several of them kind of lumped together, but there's really probably just one answer in a story format from you. But anyway, if you would tell us where you grew up, what part of the country or what part of the world, and what your family dynamics were like, where you are in the birth order, and how do you think, your birth order and where you grew up shaped you as a person. Before we jump into today's interview, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Life Story Curator, a testimonial from one of their very happy clients.
Oh my gosh, if you're considering hiring Kathy Lawless to do a book for you, you need to do it. My name is Ann DuPont, and I'm Chair Emeritus of a nonprofit that's been based in Denver called the Leadership Investment. And after 20 plus years of being in business, we decided we had to celebrate and commemorate all of the great work we'd done and the impact we'd had in the Denver community. So we hired Kathy Lawless and Life Story Curator to help us do exactly that. And I've got to tell you, the result has been simply outstanding. We went into it with a little bit of fear, thinking, is this going to be too much work? Can we really take this on? And Kathy just made it absolutely painless. She was fun. She was creative. She broke the work into bite-sized pieces that we could really take hold of and get done. And she just made it a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughter along the way. And the feedback from the members of our organization, from the staff, the community, the volunteers, has simply been outstanding. It has really done quite a remarkable job of capturing the essence of everything we achieved over 20 years. So if you're thinking about doing something like this for your organization, for your career, for your family, I would highly recommend it, and I would absolutely say that Kathy Lawless and Life Story Curator is the person for you.
I grew up in Nyack, New York, which is in Rockland County, if anybody knows it. It's about 30 miles outside of New York City, very suburban, middle class. My mom was a teacher, first grade and fourth grade. And so throughout elementary school, when I got in trouble because teachers ran and told my mom.
Oh, no, way too close.
Way too close. My dad was always an entrepreneur. And interestingly enough, in my younger years, he had a vending machine business. And so in his truck, we always had Hostess Twinkies and cupcakes and all that kind of good stuff. I am the oldest of three. My sister, the middle child, who we joke is the golden child. She is 5 years younger. And my brother, the baby, is 7 years younger. So a pretty big gap between us. And, I resonate with the older sibling. My mom is the oldest of three as well. And no surprise, my mom and I are rather similar, which growing up was sometimes a little bit like fire and gasoline. Yes. Kathy was putting her boxing gloves together. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of headbutting going on.
Yeah. A lot of independence growing up in the sense of, asking mom or dad what so-and-so meant. They would say, go look it up in the encyclopedia, right? We didn't have Google in those days. And so independence was a big part of growing up. I'm a product of the 80s and 90s. So I'm a latchkey kid, right? I spent a lot of time, I shouldn't say a lot of time, but when I came home from school, right, there was ice cream in the freezer. Tom and Jerry was on the TV. And after my snack, I'd go outside and hang out with my friends.
That's awesome. Well, I'm impressed that Tom and Jerry was still around in the 80s and the 90s.
It was my
Or maybe I'm
favorite. I used to love
surprised.
that.
Yeah, cartoons, I guess, are always a fave, huh?
That was before, we got so soft that you couldn't hit a cartoon character over the head with a fire iron, right? Like that was funny back in the day.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like, I don't know why we would believe that a kid is really going to grab a fire iron and hit somebody over the head with it in normal day-to-day practice. I don't think that really happens.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it was also the days where, like you said, as soon as you kind of had your snack, you're outside. It was about being outside, being with your friends, figuring out something to do. Yeah, very active, right? So speaking of active, what kind of activities outside of that? Sports, theater. What did you do for fun?
Growing up or nowadays?
Growing up. I mean, yeah, growing up when you were younger.
I played Little League. I played first base, which is kind of funny because I was always short, but I played first base. There were four of us. Let me rephrase this. There were four boys on my block growing up. And so we played a lot of 2-on-2 baseball, football, basketball, etc. There were some woods by our house. So we go exploring and, playing whatever games we chose to play or what we made up. And it was just outside, right? Riding bikes, eating wild berries, swatting bees, whatever we felt like doing. We had pretty much free reign. Yeah.
Yeah. And was it one of those deals where it was you were outside until mom called you home for dinner, and then that was when everything had to stop?
What's funny is that I still remember this too. It's, we were outside until it was dark or until mom called us in for dinner. And of course the argument always was in the summertime, it doesn't get dark to what, 8:30 or 9.
Yeah.
But in the wintertime, it's dark at 4:30. So why is 4:30 late in the winter when it's not late in the summer, right? I'd always try to argue because, we had hills outside our house. So we'd be sledding in the winter. And, of course, at 4:30 is like, come inside, and I'd be pissed. I want to go hang out and play more in the snow, but now it's dark and that's automatically late.
Yeah, I'm not done with my friends yet. Of course, when you're a kid, you're never done, right? So it always just is whenever it has to be over, it's over. So
that's right.
Very cool. Okay, so introvert, extrovert, or ambivert?
Extrovert.
All the way, huh?
100%.
Okay. And on the fun meter, scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a couch potato and 5 being the life of the party, where do you put yourself?
I would say I'm a 4. As much of an extrovert as I am, I'm not super energized by being in a room full of strangers, but I am energized by being in a room full of my friends and family.
So if it's your friends and family, you're probably like a 6 or 7, maybe.
It depends on the event, but yeah, I'm loud. The more I drink, the louder I get. The more I'm around my New York friends and family, the more the accent comes out. Growing up in New York, breaking shops, saying a little more crass, busting each other's balls is like part of the way we grew up. So it was like looking at each other and seeing, what can I make fun of my friends for? What are they going to make fun of me for? How thick is my skin? How thick is their skin? It was all part of growing up.
Okay. So I'm guessing you developed some pretty thick skin then.
Well, I mean, I'm learning in my old age, I'm a lot more sensitive than I ever thought I was.
Oh,
but yes, I do think we've got, I say we, but I'm thinking of my friends, but yes, I think I've got relatively thick skin.
Okay. Okay. And then on the risk meter, scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low risk taker, 5 being high risk taker, where do you put yourself?
I would say a 4 as well.
Okay. And is that professional and personal? Some people like to separate it because they're very different. They're like, oh, what my last interviewee, she's like, oh, well, I jumped out of a plane, but when it comes to my work, I'm very conservative. So, and other people are like, oh, in my work, I'm very courageous, but I would never jump out of a plane.
No, it's holistic for me. It's life and work. And I think when we try separating these personas of ourselves, like my work self and my home self, and we actually have different personas, I think there's a challenge with that. I feel like a lot of the people I talk to and work with, when they're in that place, they're in conflict because they're trying to be two different people as opposed to just be yourself. And so my risk is across the board.
So you're just one way. You're just Darren.
I try.
Okay. Well, very cool. I love those two questions, or three questions actually, because as we get through your story and start to hear more about how you got to where you are today, it really, all that starts to shine through and play out, right? And by the way, I will say I do take the liberty of changing some of those risk meters when people start talking about their stories. I'm like, wait a minute, that's more like a 9 or a 10 on a scale of 5. You're underestimating that. But some people really, because they've done it themselves, they didn't see it as risk, right? And other people, so sometimes that risk meter is interesting from the outside versus the inside.
I agree.
So Darren, tell us what it's like to be a leadership coach. So tell us, what you're doing today, what, kind of your day-to-day life is like, and then we'll get into how did I get here?
So what is it like to be a leadership coach? It's rewarding for me. As the oldest and a New Yorker, the sound of my voice is important. And as a coach, not that my voice is the most important, because quite frankly, it's your voice that's more important. But there's some merit to my voice. There's some, I hope, wisdom in my voice. So it's rewarding for me. The entrepreneurism is highly rewarding. I'm not a good corporate steward, and following the leader is not my style. So being my own boss suits me. And the coaching that I do is what's the word I'm looking for here? It's really impactful, I think, is the word I want to use, in that I've made plenty of mistakes in my career that I get to bring to the way I coach, the perspectives I have, the lessons I've learned, getting my ass kicked, some of this stuff. And I spent a lot of my corporate career in human resources, professional development, hiring and termination, having difficult conversations, promotability, performance management. All this stuff was part of my corporate background. And I bring that to the coaching relationship. And if I do my job well, and you're willing to be coached and make some changes in your life, if we're working together, hopefully in that 50-50 partnership, we're able to speed up your ability to move forward faster. And that's really, I said the word right. It's very rewarding. It's very cool. It's great to see people thrive. And when I'm part of that, like, it feels good. It's a good feeling.
Yeah. I love that. I was just meeting with a friend yesterday who's going through some transition, and I could tell he was questioning, why are you wanting to help me with what? And I'm like, because I want to see my friends thrive. I want people to thrive in the world. And when you've been through a transition, and I've been through it myself, the mindset that happens, and some of that little voice can really get a hold of you. And it's not productive, which is one of the reasons I started this podcast, because I had a good friend who helped talk me through transition. She was going through it, I was going through it, and when I was down, she could raise me up, and vice versa. And if we hadn't had each other, I think it would have been a lot harder, because you get stuck in your head.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love what you said too, but it has to be 50-50, because as a coach, you can only do so much, right?
Yeah.
The person's got to be willing to change and move forward and take action and do some things. So tell us a little bit, what kind of clients are your ideal clients? Are you executive coach? Are you business? What does that look like?
I like working with people who are mid-career. So these are typically folks who have not achieved the C-level, right, the top of the chain position. Maybe they aspire to be there, or maybe they don't. What I find is that there's often a tipping point between me being an individual contributor, i.e. the one doing all the work. And a lot of times when we reach that mid-career and some level of management, right, we've got to separate from doing the work to leading others to do the work. And sometimes those skills that made us great at doing it are not what we need to move forward to be great leaders. And that's often where I coach folks, is when they're transitioning from whatever I had been doing is great, and what I'm about to do, or I am doing, is going to be great when I figure out how to do it better. And that's where I play. I help them figure out how to do it better. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes, that leadership, changing into that leadership role is tough, because maybe you're more comfortable staying in a I do role, and versus it is so different when you move into, relying on other people and delegating and walking them through it and getting them to experience the accountability and all the pieces that you have to bring to it. So yeah, totally get it. Cool.
Yeah. Leading by example, being part of conversations that you always thought you would thrive when you're in them. And then you get there and you're like, oh shit, what am I supposed to say here? I'm like, now I'm rubbing elbows with my boss's boss who was always on this pedestal. And now they're closer to my peer. And then what happens when I make mistakes, right? All leaders make mistakes. And there's this vision that when you're higher up the food chain, mistakes don't happen, which is such a misnomer. And a lot of my clients have this perfectionism vision of themselves as if they're human and they make a mistake, somehow that's not okay or not allowed or unforgivable. And then they get trapped in this sense that I am imperfect where I need to be perfect, which is an equation that makes no sense. And when they are imperfect, they beat themselves up, and it's just too bad.
Yeah. That's a good point. We do kind of put people on a pedestal that are above us, right? And again, that's another reason why I started this podcast, is I wanted to bring the human element to people's stories, because from the outside we look at it and we're like, wow, well, they have it all figured out and I don't, and and they always have the answer, and there must be a secret playbook. And those are some of the things you get out of these podcasts, that there is no secret playbook. We're all doing the best we can and figuring it out as we go, and some are more extroverted and more expressive and quicker to make decisions and quicker to take risks. And yeah, it's very interesting when you kind of figure it out that, oh, we're all just doing the same thing. So
that's right.
And no one wants to make mistakes, but sometimes they happen. So it's how you deal with that mistake, how you own it, and move forward. So, well, very cool. Well, sounds like you do amazing work with your clients. So I'm excited to hear how others might then want to work with you. But is this what you always wanted to be when you grew up? So we're back to junior high school. You're playing with your friends, you're out in the woods or doing whatever you're doing. Were you thinking, oh, one day I'm going to be a leadership coach?
Well, if I had followed those childhood dreams, I would either be a first baseman for the New York Yankees, or I'd be a pediatrician. And I'm neither.
So those were the dreams. What did you then in college or high school, college, what did you kind of prepare for then for your career?
Not either one of those things.
I figured that.
Yeah, biology and anatomy was not my thing. When I first went to college, I was a liberal arts major, and which was basically the undecided major. And I went to school, or before I went to college, I saw my class lineup. It was very much like high school. It was English and history. And I was like, I have no desire for these classes. And I was talking to my dad, who is an entrepreneur, and I love my dad, respect my dad. And I was like, why don't I go to school for business? And that was it. Like, before I even went to my freshman year, I changed major to business. And that's what I did. It was,
I love that you changed majors before you even started.
Correct. I saw that my schedule, and I was like, this is not going to work. I am not interested in this stuff.
Well, but that's great. I think that's so much of what life is, and what I'm learning from doing these interviews is that people have these ideas and what they think they want. And then when they start either doing internships or they start getting a little closer to it, they're like, whoa, that's not, I had this idea in my head, which is such a false idea, can be one thing. The other thing is they can get totally lit up by some teacher that just exposes them to some sort of new topic or idea or discipline. And they're just like, now I'm into, it's economics is my thing, or, financial investing. I mean, it's very cool. So
yeah.
And in your case,
the other thing I hear a lot is talk about pedestal, is a lot of people who are not sure what they want to be when they grow up, or, and I mean that with all due respect, right? There are plenty of, folks late in their career who don't, quote unquote, know what they want to be when they grow up. And the image that we have of others who are successful is that they've had this linear career path where at whatever young age, they knew exactly what they wanted to be. And every step along the way was getting them closer to the goal. And when I start hearing this, I usually say, okay, who are the 3 to 5 people you respect most because of their position? We get the list. And I say, great, go interview them. Ask them about their career path and report back. And every single time it is, wow, it wasn't quite as linear as I thought.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing, right? College is this great place to learn life skills. For some people, they learn great business or whatever industry skill that they're going to be when they grow up. But my experience has shown me firsthand and through the eyes of my clients that college was great for college, and my career is not necessarily tied to what I went to school for.
Yeah. It's fascinating to see how people turn out. And when we look backwards, everything lines up or kind of connects, the dots connect, right? But they certainly didn't start out that way. So it's kind of sad. And probably we're doing a disservice for young people that we put so much pressure on. Well, what do you want to do and be when you grow up? And the expectation is you will go and do and be that, when they're really trying to figure it all out and they don't even know. They're like, well, I'm kind of good at math, or I thought I was good at writing, and maybe I should be a teacher. There's all kinds of things to explore. So, okay, so you're going to college, you're getting your business degree. Is that where you stayed with that major, or did you have some other enlightenment?
No, I stayed with it. Yeah, it was, I have to say, I'm just thinking here for a second. I'm fairly headstrong, sometimes to my benefit and sometimes to my detriment. Going through school, it never occurred to me to change majors. There was nothing else that really interested me all that much. I generally liked my classes. The people I went to school with who were also my major, some of which were friends, some of which became friends. And so there was familiarity and friendship in those classes. And it never even came up to switch. So I stayed with it throughout.
Yeah. Well, and it was probably different than what you had in high school, right? Because there wasn't, unless you took a lot of business classes in high school, right? It would be different because it wouldn't be a lot of the English and history and all that. It's going to be the economics and the finance and accounting and micro and macro and all of that stuff. So, okay.
Correct.
Okay. So you get the business degree, and then now you're in the real world. What did you do?
All right. So my father passed away in 1997. And I want to say it was last year. I have the unfortunate distinction of my dad being passed more than he was alive in my life.
Oh,
and
it's gotta be hard.
Yeah, so this is for the sympathy vote, of course, right? My father, he was an entrepreneur, and when he passed away, I remember dad's side is Jewish. At his funeral, at the funeral parlor, or whatever you call that, my Uncle Ralph, right, 5'4", strong, stocky, bullish of a man, sweet as can be. He said to me, "You're gonna run your dad's business." And my memory is like, yeah, of course I could. And he was like, "No, you're going to run his business." And that day, which I think was August 6th, my father passed away August 5. My sister's birthday is August 4, right? So this timeline is very close together. I think from August 6th, 1997, I knew when I graduated college, which was December of that year, that I was going to take over my dad's business. And it was, that was it. Like, again, headstrong, good, bad, or indifferent. Uncle Ralph said, "You're running your dad's business. Dad is gone. I'm running my dad's business."
Yeah.
And so a way I usually describe it is as literally figurative as you could step into somebody's shoes. I did that with my dad, right? It was his computer, his desk, his files, his clients, his business that was now all mine. And it was a very surreal, not ideal situation, but in hindsight, there were some great gifts in that. I was immature and unready for, working for other people. And the lessons I learned as an entrepreneur served me today, served me then, grew me up very quickly. There was no, I'm going to curse. There was no fucking around. Like, this was dad's business, right? And I'm not going to mess it up.
Yeah.
At least I hope I didn't mess it up, and, I earned the respect of my mom. I earned the respect of elders in my family, and had clients that knew my dad for years that told me that he would be proud of the way I was running the business. And so it was all very comforting for a 22-year-old kid with a chip on his shoulder that, knew everything and you couldn't tell me anything. But now I'm doing this business. I'm the CEO, I'm the president, and the buck stops with me, and I did it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. And did you feel like you knew what you were doing, or did you feel like you had to kind of show up like you knew what you were doing? I mean, because you had the business degree, but now you're in the real business, and there's all the conversation. I mean, there's all the stuff that you don't really get in college when you're now the CEO. I mean, usually you step in business and you step in a different role than actually the CEO suite. I mean, that's a very different seat to take on right away.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly played bigger than I was.
Yeah.
And that's not to suggest of arrogance or conceit or any of those things, but was I prepared to be the CEO? I mean, I have to say yes, because I did, but the real answer is no. I mean, no one told me like, "Hey, Darren, or my dad saying, if I pass, this is what to do. It was all of a sudden like, here you go, right? And like marketing, accounting, billing, collections, scheduling jobs, fixing equipment, all the stuff I just did based upon my own wherewithal and intelligence and common sense. And, I liked what my dad did here, but not so much there. And I guess I can change it now. It's up to me. And, there was a lot of self-reliance. So I think I was saying a little bit earlier is, that sense of independence mom and dad raised me on served me well as this new CEO. It was up to me to decide.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So how long did you run his business then? Why should now your business?
Yeah. Well, here's the next sob story in sympathy is my father passed away August 5 of 97. I had one more semester of school and I did some running of the business from school, but primarily had one of his guys that he trusted run the day to day. When I took it over really officially, call it Jan 1 of 98, there was a pretty big conflict and transition of me telling my dad's guys, no, you're not running the business. I am. One guy was none too pleased with that at all. And he and I got into a screaming match in front of the other people that my father had entrusted. And as that dust settled and I settled into my role, I ran that business for about 2 or 3 years. And the sob story, or the next piece of the sympathy story, is I had a house fire and I was taking a shower and I smelt smoke. And it was a house I was living in with my ex-girlfriend from college. And I walked out of the bathroom and where the hot water heater or the boiler room or whatever you want to call that was on fire. My house was on fire and it was a duplex. And anyway, I lost all of the stuff I needed to run the business. And so as the young guy I didn't have the wherewithal to try to sell, right, the intellectual property or the client list or anything. And the business just fizzled. It was gone, done. Like it burned with that house.
Wow. Wow. That is a kind of a shock and a tragedy all at the same time. And your livelihood, where you're living is gone now, but also now your livelihood and your business is gone. So, wow.
Yeah. I tell the story and I don't tell it all that often. But the thing I reflect back on is there's a lot of these what if scenarios we play in our brains, or maybe we even play them out with other people. And not that I ever envisioned how I would respond to a house fire, but I always thought of myself as someone that could act rationally in chaotic or dangerous situations. And that was the most dangerous situation I probably have ever been in, quite frankly. And I had all my faculties. I still remember the decisions I made. I remember the ways I made them. I remember why I made them. Like there's some pretty vivid memories of that event. And I handle myself in a way that I'm proud of. I'm losing my words, but yes, I was very proud of the way I handled myself. And as you said, the business was gone with that house.
Yeah. So what did you do then to, you had to kind of reinvent yourself or rebuild your house? What did you do?
Yeah, I moved in with my mom for a little bit. That was a trip. I don't remember so many of the moving parts of what happened directly thereafter. But I did decide I wasn't going to try to revamp the company. I wasn't going to try to rebuild it. We took physical inventory of smaller mom and pop convenience stores, gas stations, some wholesale types of joints. And in New York at the time, a lot of these mom and pop pharmacies were not selling out. They were getting bought up or selling to CVS, Duane Reade. I think there was something called Love Pharmacies in New York at the time. So the clientele was dying. And I remember, embarrassingly so, I was like, all right, well, I got to try to make a play here with CVS and see if I could be their inventory provider. And I remember being so nervous about this phone call I was going to make to CVS, and looked in the yellow pages or the white pages at the time. And this is about 2000. give or take. So the internet was really not the internet at that point. And I remember being so nervous. And finally I was like, all right, make the call. And so here I am, a 25-year-old guy making a call to CVS, and I don't even know who the heck I talked to. But I got through to somebody, and I, made my really nervous, scratchy voice pitch of who I was and why I was calling them. And they're like, no, we already have our provider. And I was like, okay, thanks. And that was really the end. Like, that was it. That was the last Hail Mary that I was going to throw up for this business. And as much as I like being my own boss, I didn't love the business. It wasn't something I really thought would be my thing long term. Mm-hmm. And but now I was 25 years old, and I had president and whatever I put on my resume, which had some impact to some of the people I shared it with. And my next job was a manager at a Staples office center. So I was one of the guys at the time. We had to wear these, they were supposed to be red, but they were like pink and white striped button-up shirts, and I was that dude walking around in that shirt, managing that store. It was pretty funny.
And were you pretty jazzed to get that job? Did you think of it as, oh, okay, this is just another step in my path, or no, this is pretty cool. I can use all my skills in the small business now in a bigger business kind of thing? Yeah,
I was psyched. I had thought that, running the business had catapulted me from paying dues in a way, mm-hmm. starting from the bottom. And I thought, great, I'm part of the management ranks. I mean, that's what, the American dream tells you, right? You start off laying bricks, then you run the bricklaying company, right? So I started off as managing my company. Now I'm managing at Staples. And, all due respect to anyone that's in retail, but retail sucked. I hated it. I liked the managing part of it, but I really started to get burnt out that, whenever our district manager came around, we worked all night to like pretty up the store. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, if we don't do this normally, like, why are we like bending over backwards for this district manager that might show up on time, might not show up at all, right? He's going to shake hands and kiss babies, and, but that was the game. And I didn't want to play that game.
Yeah. You're like, are we here for our customers? Shouldn't we pretty up the store for the customers, not for ourselves?
Yeah, anyway, this is part of my problem with corporate. Like, there are certain rules of the game that I didn't want to play by. I didn't have a say in those rules. And so I bitched and moaned and did it begrudgingly, and, eventually wore out my welcome there, as I did many other jobs down the road.
So you mentioned in your intro that you had spent some time in HR. So your management, that's kind of frontline. So how did you get into the HR piece then? Can you give us some of the next steps, I guess? Yeah.
So when I left Staples, was 2000. Yeah, it was 2000. Yeah, I should probably have my LinkedIn open so I can get these dates right. But 2000, I left Staples, and I had 2 job interviews. One was with, and I had many of them, but these were the last 2. One was with Sam Adams, which is for us in Colorado. Fat Tire is kind of like the Colorado equivalent to Sam Adams on the East Coast. Delicious beer, and the job was to be a beer rep, and the job was to go around all these pubs and bars in New York City and sell Sam Adams. They were going to pay for my car, pay for parking. I was living in New York City at the time. They wanted me to eat in these bars. It was like an awesome job.
Yeah.
And the second interview I had was with this recruiting firm. And the recruiting firm was so buttoned up, high stakes, expensive suits. And they dangled in front of me a $30K bonus. And what I mean by that is, when they were talking to me about the job, they were saying, here's the salary, it was $50,000. And I don't know if it's fair to say they told me the starting bonus was $30K, but they gave me an indication that the bonus would be that amount of money or thereabouts. And of course I had dollar signs in my eyes. I was like, holy shit, I'm going to make $30K bonus. And I remember taking that recruiting job and never went to the second interview for Sam Adams. Who knows if I would have got the job? Who knows what life would be at if I went that route? But yeah, in October of 2000, I accepted a job with this company in New York to be a recruiter, which turned out to be bullshit because I wasn't a recruiter. I was like, low man on the totem pole doing this research, trying to like get names. And we used to call it a ruse. Like we'd call into all these companies and say, my name is something other than who I am. And my job is something other than what I did. And if I did my job well, you would hand over to me a bunch of names and I would do my research and plug these names into our system. And people above me would call those names and try to get them to change jobs.
Wow. Well, that's got to be kind of, not maybe aligned with your integrity to, like you said, your job is a ruse. So, I mean, did that bother you at all? I mean, was that part of what, I mean, not only did they not follow through on what they said that you would be doing, but I mean, did that also affect you then? You're like, wait a minute, this just isn't even right.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember I would joke that the only true thing out of my mouth all day was the answer to, how are you?
Oh man. Oh, okay. So what kind of a toll did that take on you? A lot of times people have like physical ailments or just they're like, I'm done with this. I got to get out of here.
So I got hired in October. Bonuses were paid in February. I was not eligible for bonus year one. So I worked 3 months of whatever year, 2000. 2001, I worked the whole year. Did not like it, but did it. The dollar signs were still there. February 2001, I got my 30K bonus. And I was like, holy shit, this is a lot of money for me at the time.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
So they came through with the bonus.
They came through with the bonus, right? So I remember paying off a bunch of debt. I bought my mom a washer and dryer for Christmas. My brother got a new computer. Maybe my sister got a new computer too. So there was plenty of money for me to spend on my family. And I remember thinking, I hate this job so much. I am going to work the next year to get my bonus and I am going to quit. And I worked the entire year. And not that I had a calendar ticking off the days, but there were moments where I was like, how much more time do I have in this job? And I remember right around bonus time, I took vacation plus a day. And that extra day was to make sure the check cleared. And after the check cleared, because I got 30K a second year, this is 2002, I think, 2002, I think that's right, or 2003. And it was 03, sorry, 03, I get the bonus. And I went in and I quit on the spot. I told my boss, this job sucks. I don't know if I told him the job sucks, but I said, this is not for me and I'm done. And he almost verbatim said, good, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
So there were signs you weren't maybe at your best, but how can you be at your best when you're, I don't know, that is a weird dynamic.
It was a miserable job. I hated it.
Okay.
Other people loved it. I just hated it.
Yeah. They loved it that they were tricking people and they were.
I think people's motivations vary, right? I mean, I remember telling my mom that I was making all this money, but I was miserable. And she was like, in essence, suck it up.
Yeah.
Like, the money is worth more than your happiness. And it might've been the first moment in my life that I realized, like, there's more to life than just this paycheck.
Yeah.
And I did promise myself then, I mean, I was somewhere around 27, 28. And I promised myself I would never again take a job solely for the money. And I'm 46 and I have not taken a job just for the money since.
Okay. You've kept your word to yourself.
I did.
Okay. So what did you do after? I mean, now you got your bonus. Did you play for a bit because you have all this money, or were you like, no, I gotta get me a different job?
I did play. Earlier when we were talking about college, I was going to say that I think the Europeans have it right in the sense that, you take a gap year in between, I don't think they call it high school and college. They call it something different, but between high school and college, you take a gap year and you go travel. And after I got that second 30K bonus, I had my gap year. So throughout the rest of the winter, so the bonus was paid in February, I believe. So March, April, May, I was a bike messenger in New York City. It was an awful winter, like snow, sleet, gross, riding my bike, which I kind of dug. It was kind of fun. And in May, my buddy Theo and I, he was coming to Colorado and I was like, I'm coming with you. And he and I took a 30-day road trip. So fun. Every day we woke up in whatever city we're in, we looked at each other and said, what do you want to do today? You want to leave or you want to stay? And that was the decision to do that, leave or stay. We went from New York to Chicago to Montana, down to Arizona, up to the Grand Canyon, into Durango or Telluride, and my geography is not great, and eventually landed in Breckenridge just about June 1-ish of 2003. And that started, I mean, the drive really started, but when we landed in Breckenridge, that was like the ski bum year of the year for me, of life. You know, I waited tables for the only time in my life. I made snow at Breckenridge Mountain, driving around snowmobiles all day long. I got a free ski pass. It wasn't a great season in terms of snow, so I didn't get 100 days, but I got 50 days on the mountain. And it was just an awesome year. It was so carefree and still had plenty of money. And I was unstressed and made great friends who are still my friends today. And it was awesome. It was an extraordinary time of life.
You're just being present and kind of living the dream. So how did Colorado get to be your target? You said your friend was coming. Did he have a job lined up at some point, or was it just he had more that he knew Colorado and you're like, well, then I'm going to go with you? You didn't really care where you landed.
Yeah, it was more that he knew he wanted to be in Colorado and I was coming with him.
And had you ever been to Colorado before?
I had been, yes, but there was no recollection of like, I love Colorado, that's where I want to go. It's more of, I'm a pack animal, right? I joke that my spirit animal is the wolf, and wolves, they travel in packs. I like to be around my friends and family, and the idea of coming by myself would have been too scary for me to do. And the fact that Theo was doing it, that was the pack. I'm like, I'm coming with you.
Yeah. So you're not a lone wolf.
That's correct. I am not a lone wolf. Yeah. And
Theo,
yeah, I do. I'm funny. I'm looking to my right here, and the calendar I had for 2021 is of wolves. And there's this really beautiful wolf staring at me right now. Yeah, but Theo had a friend from high school that was in Breckenridge, and that was really the reason we stopped there. I mean, I think we went there to see what it was like. And it's awesome. Breckenridge is a beautiful place. And that's where we threw anchor. We stayed there, and that was it.
Wow. So then you're ski bum, you're making snow, you're doing whatever. Did you say at one point, okay, now I got to get a real job at some point? The 30K had to run out, I'm sure.
It did. My plan was to be there for 1 year. And I lived that plan. In essence, May of 2004, I went back to New York City. And I was able to parlay those recruiting skills or those research skills into a internal or corporate recruiter job. And when I went to New York, I landed my first internal recruiting job, and it was beautiful. It suited me so well, really enjoyed it. And that was the start of the next, I don't even know, I mean, I could do the math real quick, but 10 or 15 years of my corporate career started from that trip back to New York.
Yeah. So you actually got to use your real name. You got to talk about a real company and real jobs. I mean, wow, what a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, go figure, right?
Maybe this is back to what you said about people who separate their work from their personal, you know what I mean? That you had to do that. Like, you had to separate probably all your values from yourself in order to do that other job. That's kind of an odd situation. So.
Yeah, I was not good at that job at first. Like the idea that I had to have this story of like, all right, so to be more specific, we recruited in the investment banking world. So for instance, if I was calling JP Morgan Chase, right, I would call in and say, my name is Kathy Lawless. I'm also at JP Morgan Chase. And the idea is that if you typed in my name, quote unquote, my name into the system, you would see I'm an employee.
Oh.
So therefore you would think I was credible. And then I would have my quote unquote ruse, which was my bullshit story of why I needed to know the names of your colleagues. And if I told that bullshit story well enough, you gave me the names, and then we recruited your people out of your company. It was like the age old way people used to recruit back in the day.
Yeah. Wow. I never even heard of that. I always thought, that you would meet people in, you're out in the industry or on Wall Street and people are at bars, and that's how all the recruiting happened, right? You're like, well, you should come over to our firm and you should come to our firm. It was a little more straight up than that, but okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in HR then, and you said 15 years then. So what made you decide to go out on your own, or is there some other things in there that you want to highlight?
I'm not a good corporate employee, period.
You might have mentioned that once or twice.
I can't even sugarcoat it, nor would I try to. That's not my New York style. Like, I am not a good corporate employee. Reason being is that my opinions are important to me. earlier in my career, I shared them without much discretion. And as you can imagine, a gruff New Yorker sharing opinions in the way New Yorkers do rubs some people the wrong way. So my career is littered with great experience and shit experience, right? The great experience is I resonate with people, or I respect you enough to give me the hard feedback. The not so great experience is the exact opposite. You don't like my approach and I don't respect you enough to listen to the feedback you give me. And therefore I made myself expendable. And that story repeated itself until 2010. And I got let go from a job I did not want to get let go from. And when I got the news and I left the office for that last time, I was 36, I think, if I'm doing my math right. And I literally called my mom crying. I was so upset. And it was the first time that I decided, I shouldn't say decided, I guess the first time I realized that in all of my stories, I was the only constant. And
there's a big aha moment here.
Yes.
Okay.
So earlier you talked about the secret sauce, and there's lots of secret sauces, or maybe lots of ingredients to the secret sauce. And for me, the main or first ingredient is I had to stop pointing the finger at you, at the environment, at my company, and start pointing the finger at myself. And when I started to recognize that I am the center of all of these stories, good and bad, that's when I started to realize, like, oh my God, I'm the reason. And the funny thing is, that's really not very funny, is when I started to have this understanding, one of my first steps was to read books on corporate politics. And in these books, they gave the before and after example of how to act or behave. And as I read the words on the pieces of paper of the before example, it was so obvious you shouldn't act that way. And yet in real life, that's how I was unknowingly acting. So everyone else around me knew about my poor behavior and I didn't. And it was, again, as figuratively literal as you could be, the little kid with chocolate all over your face saying, I did not eat those cookies. That was me. I didn't have those cookies. And people, dude, we see the chocolate on your face. No, you don't. There's no chocolate on my face. That was me. And I didn't realize it. And so that was like a big turning point. And that turning point lasted for a good while, until my last corporate gig, where, and I had a couple of hiccups throughout. I mean, this is not like the smoothest of sailing, but my last corporate gig went from getting hired in a position I really wanted for a boss that I still love to this day. She is one of the top 2 bosses I've ever had. And a classic cliche, the company brought in new leadership. My old boss was not in favor, and vice versa with new leadership. She negotiated her exit. New leadership brought in their crony, who was hands down the worst leader I have ever had the misfortune of working for. And because of this poor leadership, I started to behave in my old ways. And I hired a coach. And I said to my coach, I have to figure out how to play nice in these corporate sandboxes. And her words still ring true. She said, maybe you should change the sandbox. And that was it. Whatever it was, that 5 words. Those 5 words were the seed of leaving corporate and start my own gig. And over the course of a few months, it wasn't that long, 2 to 3 months of us brainstorming what that would look like and what I would do and all this stuff. And July of 2018, I had this conversation with my old boss, and we agreed that we were not good coworkers and it was not my place. And I negotiated my exit, and that was the segue into me being an entrepreneur.
Wow. So 5 words. Why don't you change the box?
That's right.
And, just got you in a whole different mindset. And of course, the other thing is sometimes that could mean to someone, just find another corporate thing. You know what I mean? But I think you knew, no, the box really had to change, right? It couldn't be the corporate box anymore. But now, so then you decide to be a coach and go through all of that. And we are now getting to run out of time, dang it. But wow, so that's a real big, switch for you. So then how did you, then you said, okay, now I'm going to be my own coach. Is that kind of how that all?
Yeah, I mean, not exactly, but close. I mean, I left corporate in July of 2018, so called July 1. When I left corporate, my thought was I am going to be a consultant for small businesses who don't have an HR department, right? They don't have the wherewithal or understanding of benefits, compensation, performance management, hiring and termination, like just employee goodwill type stuff. And I got a couple of clients out of the gates, one of which I still work with, which is wonderful. And the big client I got was a very traditional oriented consulting gig. And it was like, I don't have the right, the right analogy. Maybe you've got it, but I was thrust right back into a corporate environment, or all the corporate bullshit, all the politics. Don't say this to Mary, but tell John that. It was like, give me a break. And quite frankly, I didn't perform very well. And when I left, I was like, consulting is not my gig. And I was lucky enough that I have a supportive girlfriend who's also a coach. I had my coach who are both saying, dude, be a coach.
Be a coach.
And right, like, just like Uncle Ralph and just like the seed of why don't you change the sandbox? Like, that's all I need. And I was like, okay, I'll go be a coach. And it wasn't dismissive. It was really open and, eyes wide open, arms wide open. I was like, great, I'm going to go be a coach. And I immediately enrolled in my program. And that was January of 2019. And now I've been coaching since, and it's been pretty cool. It's been pretty great.
Well, I can tell you just light up when you talk about it.
Oh, it's awesome.
So different than how you tell the rest of your story. So, well, Darren, I would like to talk to you more about some of I know what you did probably to get certified, but we do have to start wrapping up. So I know we have a hard stop here coming. So I have 2 wrap-up questions. So the first is, tell us what you think served you best when you kind of look back at your career and your life. Was it a trait, a strength?
I hope this doesn't come across as arrogant or selfish or something, but that I served myself well. And what I mean by this is I didn't get any handouts. I had no well, I did get inheritance when my father passed away, but I used that as well. But I relied on the way my parents raised me. I rely on my voice. Sometimes I use it with discretion, sometimes not. Sometimes effective, sometimes not. But I make stuff happen, meaning that if I want to be an entrepreneur, I've chosen that path, I'm going to make it happen. I am now driven by an aspiration of never having to write my own resume again. And I live that, just like I've never taken a job just for the money.
Yeah.
And so I guess that maybe it's not so much me as it is my makeup, my values, what I care about, my upbringing, but a great sense of self-reliance and independence has served me well.
Has served you well, yeah. And being that firstborn.
Yes.
Making your way. There was no one in your way and no one setting the stage for you. So, okay, last question. What do you have any words of wisdom that impacted you over these times? You've had some seeds planted, but is there any quotes or any words of wisdom that you would share?
Oh, man. So hard to think about one. There's many, right? The one that resonates most recently is Richard Branson said, if someone presents you with a great idea and you don't know what to do, say yes and figure it out later. And that I really like. The other thing is a newer practice of mine over the last 2 years is called positive intelligence. And positive intelligence is built upon mindfulness, accepting life, trying not to categorize quote unquote good or bad. And the idea of that is to say that everything could be a gift, right? My dad's death, although I don't wish it, and I would take him back tomorrow if I could, is an event I cannot change. Mm-hmm. And from his death came some great gifts, right? My growing up, becoming an entrepreneur, making my mom proud by taking over that business, skills and traits that still serve me today. And so the other thing that I would share is recognizing that when we're in the moments of difficulty, it's like the worst, right? We're in great mourning or great struggle or something that would otherwise fall into a negative oriented bucket. But then recognizing that when we're through it and we have hindsight, oftentimes there's great things that come from it.
Yeah.
And if we can say neutral, if you will, in the way we evaluate our life's events, that too is serving me real well. And I would say the last thing is really relying on yourself, but also not being afraid to ask for help when you need it. And maybe that's a big thing too, is I think some people don't know when they quote unquote need it. And therefore they try to do too much. And that's when overwhelm, burnout seems to happen. And I've been lucky enough, and this is something I'm proud of myself for, is I will ask for help. Sometimes too often, but I'll ask for help when I need it and we'll see what comes, right? Someone may tell me, go look it up, like my mom and dad did. Fine, but I've asked, and if you were going to help me, great. And if not, I'll go figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and people want to help other people. So a lot of times if someone asks me, I mean, I'm thrilled to help someone with something. And many times I don't want to just impose a thought or an idea or a suggestion on someone, but sometimes you can see it and you just don't want to say anything. So to ask is awesome. Well, Darren, it has been a pleasure. I'm so glad that our paths crossed, and thank you for sharing today, because you never know who needed to hear this today. And they're going to be moved, touched, and inspired, and hopefully moving forward into their new world. And maybe some are going to be reaching out to you like, hey, I need this guy. I need that shot in the arm. So thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Kathy.
And listeners, if you enjoyed today's interview, please subscribe below, and then you'll be alerted as other interviews are published. If you have any questions for me or for Darren, you can find this interview on my website, lifestorycurator.com, where I'll post it in the blog section, and I'll post your social media too, Darren, so that they can find you and vice versa. So anyway, on that note, I will say stay safe, stay well, and let's keep sharing those stories. Have a great day.